Hello, everyone. So my story picks up as one of those parents that you're talking about in Oklahoma City, except I was in Milwaukee. Okay, and that's what I'm going to talk about today, just simply being a part of this movement as a parent. My involvement in the school choice movement came as a result of wanting something better for my children than what I saw in the existing public school system. I have an extended blended family. I'm the mother of 6. When we put the families together, it comes out to about 14. My husband of 35 years is here with me today. And I was one of those people I had from my first marriage. I had 2 children. By the time I got ready to do it again, I wanted to have a better husband, have better children, make all the right, decisions. I think I did okay, all right? So I wanted something different for my second set of kids than I had for my first set of kids. I had a son who went to 13 different public schools before 7th grade. I wasn't in a position to be able to afford private school, so that was not an option. Scholarships, that was not available. And so I kept searching, I kept looking, all right? Ultimately, for him, he never did find success in the public school system and found very limited success in life. In fact, he was murdered on the streets of Milwaukee in 1998. Everything that I've done has been a result of what it is that I've learned from my experience as a mother and a concerned member of my community. So the job that I do today is not what I'm going to talk about. The degrees that I have is not what I'm going to talk about. I'm going to talk about those grassroots parents that you talked about, because that's who I am. All right, that's who I am. And because I wanted something better for my own children, that started my search. And in Milwaukee, we had a school called Urban Day. Oh, well, actually, it's still there. There's a school called Urban Day. And it was a private school. And I knew some people who attended there, but I always thought that private school was outside of my reach because I couldn't afford it. And then a friend of mine who attended school said, well, you know what? They offer scholarships to parents who have skills that they can offer to the school. And so I'm an at-home mom, and I'm like, okay, well, let me go and I'll apply. The tuition at that time was $600 a year. And while that sounds like nothing, it can be a lot, especially if you have more than one child. But I went to the school and I offered my skills, and in exchange for the skills that I had, they made scholarship opportunities available to me. And at Urban Day, they were able to see the potential that I had, not only as a parent, but also as a member of the community. And they nurtured that within me. And how did they do that? They got me actively involved in committees. Became a part of the parent board, eventually became a part of the school board. They offered me a job because the principal at the school wanted to go on a conference, and she didn't have anybody to leave in charge of the school. She said, but if you do this for 1 week, your tuition will be free. I'm like, for a month. I said, oh, okay, I can do that. And I had no education background at all. But she felt secure in leaving me at the school because I knew the school, I knew the board, I knew the parents, I knew the teachers, and there was a mutual respect. When Sister Virginia came back from that trip, she so enjoyed what happened. She said, well, Zakiya, why don't you stay on for another couple of months? This will give me an opportunity to work on development. And as I listened to her, she said the magic word: your tuition would be free for the rest of the year. And I said yes. And so that's how I got involved in education. And this whole time, as they were nurturing this, they were talking about these opportunities about having contracts with the public schools so that schools like Urban Day and other community-based schools could be able to share the resources in the public school system because we had the exact same kids. And it made sense to me. Why not? But it didn't make sense to anybody else. And so the panel before, when they were talking about the politics, I wasn't there. I didn't really understand the politics, and my husband used to tell me all the time that everything is political. But I learned real fast. I learned really, really fast about what it was that was going on. And so then we started as parents to reach out to the public school system, to get that type of support. And one of the people we reached out to, and she was on the panel earlier, was Debbie McGriff. She was there in Milwaukee. She was new, and she was with, for whatever reason, his name is escaping me, Bob Peterkin, right, was a superintendent. And we met with them. And we met with them as parents. We talked about, you know, what our goals were, what it was that we wanted to do, and they were in agreement, to make a long story short. The legislation was crafted, and then we always say that on the way to Madison, which was our state capital, it got hijacked by the teachers union, all right? The teachers union started putting language in that legislation that we couldn't live with as the private schools. They wanted to determine what the curriculum was. They wanted to determine who the teachers were. They wanted to do a whole lot of things, and so we backed out. But when we backed out, then we started organizing as parents, because if we couldn't do it this way, then we needed to find another way to do it, even though the Milwaukee Public Schools at that time was very cooperative. So then working with Annette Polly Williams, who we consider the grandmother of the school choice movement in Milwaukee, she said to us, she came to us, she said, you know what, we might be able to get this legislation passed and just go past MPS. And we were like, what do you mean go past MPS, Milwaukee Public Schools? That's everything. How can you go past MPS? And she said, go directly to Department of Public Instruction. And so that's what we started. And she was working, you know, with the Republican legislatures. And I can't go through the whole history because it's too much. But there's a lot of revisionist history out there. No, really. Really, you know, I respect people who write books, but sometimes I wonder where the sources are, because sometimes I read things and I'm like, wait a minute, you know, I was there. And I don't remember it happening like that. I don't have to be mentioned, but I don't remember it happening like that. So there's a lot of revisionist history that's out there. And oftentimes in this revisionist history, the contribution of parents is not discussed. And in many instances, it's not really totally understood. People would come to Milwaukee and wonder, how did we do it, you know, in Milwaukee? And so I was one of those people that organized tours where people would have the opportunity to go and see and visit the schools, you know, and then meet the people who were instrumental in making the change happen. And one of the things I found from all of the visitors that used to come to Milwaukee is that the element that they did not have, that we did have in Milwaukee, were parents. We're parents. We were the ones who are going to be affected by this legislation, these policy changes. Why not have our input? And oftentimes, even today, I find that schools, some legislators, and others discount the role of parents because they see themselves as knowing best. This is not a father know best, you know, kind of system. We as parents know what it is that we want to have for our children. And while oftentimes we may not have all of the nitty-gritty details, as parents, and if you're a parent, you know what it is that's good for your child. And you make decisions every day on the basis of what it is that is good for your children. So as I talk about having the multitude of children that I have, no two children are alike. So my children attended public schools, private schools, charter schools. Is there anything left? Everything but at home. That's the one thing I did not do, okay? That's the one thing that I did not do. In Milwaukee was smart enough to find people like myself when we started to really rev up this movement. People like me, and when I say that, what I'm talking about is people who knew their community like the back of their hand. They were not new. They hadn't got hired to study the community. They didn't get hired you didn't have to be introduced to who the politicians were, all right? All of the politicians in Milwaukee that we were trying to impact were my friends. We had been doing this for years, all right? So this was not new. And so then when I had the responsibility of organizing a cadre of parents who could go out and impact the community, then what I looked for was people and parents that were just like me. They knew their community just like I did. So what did that mean? That meant I needed somebody Hispanic. I needed somebody white. You know, I needed a male. Whatever it was that I thought I needed in order to go ahead and build this, I did. Because this is what was important. There was no need for me to go and try and introduce myself to you when I knew somebody else who knew you even better. Now, every city doesn't have what we have in Milwaukee. I always say there's 1 degree of separation from anybody or anything that we need to know. All right? And many times it's just half a degree. But what was important is that we had people who knew their community, who were passionate, for what it was that needed to be done, who had a personal interest, not just getting paid. They had a personal interest in what it was that they were trying to do. And when we talk about, and before, when somebody held up the sign, a sense of urgency, urgency was very important, because oftentimes when we talk about reform, all right, they talk about over years. All right, but let's think about this for a moment. If you have a child that's in 4th grade, and we're talking about an initiative or a reform that's going to take 4 years, all right, that child is either on his way to high school, or unfortunately maybe someplace else. And if it doesn't happen in that 4-year time, they're somewhere in high school, and the reform still yet has not taken place. So as adults, we have the option of 5 years, 10 years, because what's going to happen? Gain weight, lose weight, few gray hairs, lose hair. That's what happens to us as adults. But what is it that happens to our children? And are we prepared, or have we been prepared for the consequences of that? I've had the good fortune, again, of being involved in this movement for a long time. And I can look at my children, and I can look at my grandchildren, and I can see the results of the work that we did. And this work is not just for my children, but the impact that it has had on thousands of children. Because if I think about it like this, my oldest daughter is now 43. 43. And her son was one of the first people to be involved in the school choice. And now he has children, all right? What if we were waiting for a 10-year, a 15-year, a 20-year reform to take place? Where would those children be today? So that sense of urgency, yes, we absolutely don't have time. What I'd like to say in closing is that when we organized in the old-fashioned way. I mean, I love email, texting, twitting, and all this other stuff that we do. But we organized in the old-fashioned way. Word of mouth, passed out flyers, made phone calls. Some of you may have never heard of a phone tree, all right? But it worked, and the fact that we could get 1,000 parents, we were excited. That was good. Being able to put politicians on the spot, and the former governor of Wisconsin, Governor Tommy Thompson, talks about this to this day, that at a rally that we held with 600 people, and I introduced him, and he came up to speak, and I put him on the spot, and I asked him whether or not he was going to support, this initiative. And he told me later on, he said, you know what, Zakia, up until that point, I didn't think that I would. But when I looked out there and I saw all those children and I saw those parents, I knew that that was the right thing to do. Plus, I had put him on the spot in front of all the cameras, and so he knew, that was exactly what it was that he needed to do. So, in closing, knowing your community, knowing who are the people who can make things happen. And they're not oftentimes, in fact, most times, they're not the ones, with the big names. They're the ones who have the ultimate investment in this movement, and that is those who have their children. Parents, we don't want to be window dressing. We don't want to be the people that you pull out when it's time for a press conference, or you want to look good, or you even want to raise additional money. We know what it is that's best for our children, and if we want our movement to be successful, we want to be inclusive of those parents from the very beginning, not just when the cameras are there. Thank you very much.